This is the regular meeting of the Darien Housing Authority. Present tonight are Susan Vogel, Peter, myself, and Teresa is joining us. We have in front of us a set of minutes from the meeting of November the 27th. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I've made a correction into the minutes.
Correction. What do you want to correct?
Lorraine was not here because she had.
That's a
Oh,
December.
sorry, the December.
Yeah,
sorry.
November.
That's
June,
right.
November.
Sorry, I'm
So
sorry.
I would make a motion to accept the November meeting minutes as submitted.
That's correct. The December minutes are going to be put off until the next meeting because they didn't get put on the agenda and they didn't want to do
Got it.
juggling
That's fine.
around putting
And we
in.
just got one
All right,
small.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. The bonding issue is on the agenda just so that we can talk about it, get it on the table. We met prior to this meeting in December and decided, the Housing Authority decided that we would in fact sell the bonds rather than having Chaffa sell them the way we did for the Heights. In order to make that happen, a couple of things have to take place. There was a resolution which was passed. That resolution is included in the December minutes, which we will get at next month's meeting. But one of the legal requirements for that is that we hold a public hearing, and we will do that tonight at 7:30. If our regular meeting has not concluded, we'll interrupt the regular meeting to do the bond hearing at 7:30. We will then, once that is completed, we will require, and I appreciate that Jamie's here tonight because the first selectwoman has to sign off on the fact that we did in fact hold a public hearing to discuss the bonding issue. That hearing, when we get to it, will only concern comments anybody might have relative to the bonding. We're not talking about any other part of the project schedule, timing, anything. We're simply talking about the procedure by which the Housing Authority will sell the bonds. So that's the only reason it's on the agenda during this meeting, in case anybody has any questions about what we're planning to do later this evening. Okay. Executive Director's Report.
The only thing I have is that unfortunately we've had 2 residents from OTHH pass away this week.
Yes.
Other than that, I have nothing.
Just so everybody knows, Bill Greger passed away and Karen Simmons passed away. Both were located elsewhere. We'll have to see what the terms of the current lease where they were located are.
I already know 960 Hope. I already tried negotiating with the landlord and he's going to let us out of the lease with 2-month deposit that he has. I've left a message. I haven't left messages because the voicemail is full for Ms. Simmons and she was out on West Avenue.
Yep. So at any rate, we'll deal with those issues. But those are...
Those guys are surprised. Karen's.
Yeah,
Very sorry to hear.
yeah. That's all we've got. Old Town Hall houses redevelopment. Mr. McClutchy, what do you got for us?
Redevelopment updates. Just moving forward with the bond issuance and getting the due diligence together for the financial closings. Everything seems to be on schedule for that. We are making all of the preparations for that closing, as well as getting together the demolition. We believe we will have final sign-offs and discontinuations of all the utilities by the end of the month. And we should be able to start the demolition shortly thereafter.
I know somebody told me, I haven't driven by the site for a couple of weeks, but somebody told me there is equipment on site.
Lots of equipment.
So we are making things are moving along. We're prepared to begin.
Yes, there is equipment parked on the site today.
Yes.
and so they are ready to
It's good
go.
that they got it parked there, because a lot being parked. 4 months, 3 months I've been under there, I thought it would have been torn down already and halfway up.
No, there's all kinds of I's that have to be dotted and T's that have to be crossed, but we are moving along. It's
The
not-
invasion fleet's in place.
Yes, right.
Exactly.
We're ready to go.
Why did you get everybody out of there in such a hurry when there's nothing being done for 2 or 3 months?
Because we had to find locations for everybody and make
But
sure
everybody's been out since the beginning of November.
we are moving as quickly as we possibly
Doesn't
can.
seem like you're moving quick enough.
I'm sorry it doesn't seem that
I'm the
way.
one that dispossessed now, you know,
I understand that.
you know.
Had we waited to move people longer, first of all, we would not have had the opportunity to take advantage of the apartments that we found in town. Second of all, any hiccup in somebody moving out would have delayed the actual start of demolition. We wanted the building cleared so that we could do all the necessary things that have to be done. You have to remember, the fact that we're not physically tearing the building down does not mean things are not taking place on that site.
It doesn't look like it.
Utilities have to be turned off, all the prep work has to be done for that big equipment to go in there and start tearing it apart.
I turned my utilities off when I moved out.
I'm sorry you feel that way, but the reality is we had to do what we did in the timing that we did. We are on schedule, in fact, just slightly ahead of schedule.
Amazing.
And we will continue to stay that way. Relative to Old Town Hall houses redevelopment, I have had conversations with Mark McEwen from the Fire Marshal's Office, who is the person in charge of first response in the town. I have had conversations with the paramedics at 310. They're discussing with the supervisor for Post 53 what we're going to do to deal with the problem. We have the ambulance on that site, and we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that so that we make sure that the ambulance is not blocked in by any of the work that we're doing. So those conversations are ongoing, but everybody who needs to be involved has been made involved. In fact, I made the Board of Selectmen aware of the situation when I spoke with them a week ago. The other thing, and Jamie, I didn't mention this to you, but now since you're here, I will mention it to you. There is apparently language in the deed that speaks to the flagpole and the memorial that is on site. Now, as you know, because I did mention, we've talked to Monuments and Ceremonies. They have no desire to keep that monument, in that everybody who's named on that monument is also named at least one other monument somewhere in town. So there's nothing unique about the names that are on that monument. We have made arrangements to find a place for the monument and the flagpole. The VFW were originally going to take the monument, but they had no place for the flagpole and didn't want the flagpole. Spring Grove Cemetery has offered to take both the monument and the flagpole. They have a suitable location for it. We've made arrangements to have it moved at no cost to the project, by the way. But we will need somebody in your office, Jamie, to sign off on the change to what the requirement in the deed is, because the deed apparently requires that we maintain that monument. So we'll have to either put language in saying we'll maintain it at a different spot, but we're going to have to figure out what we have to do to get around that little glitch, because there's no need to keep the monument.
Okay.
All right? Other than that, I have nothing else.
I do.
Yes,
Have you come up with a name?
we have not. We haven't even begun the
Are you
discussion.
going to ask the residents if they're going to be acceptable to that? Whatever you come up with? Not something like Darien, old seniors housing, so every crook in the tri-state area knows we're all people living there,
No.
that they could come and steal from us anytime.
As we did with the Heights, we will look to see if renaming that property is appropriate. Given that there are very few people who recall when the town hall was actually at that location, we think it is appropriate. We'll look for public input. We'll look for input from all the parties that are involved in the process.
But isn't that taking away from the town itself? Why do you have to change the name of everything to suit the newer people here when there's old people here that remember this stuff.
We're not changing, first of all, we haven't committed to changing the name. We're going to look into the subject of changing the name. We're looking at changing the name not to take away from what was there before, but to see if there is something more appropriate. In fact, before it was Town Hall, it was Royal School.
Correct.
And so the fact that we chose Old Town Hall houses is interesting, but isn't truly historic as far as the site is concerned. At the time they named what they did, they could have gone back to when it was Royal School. Why they chose not to, I don't know. I wasn't part of that decision. But we will look at all of it. And if we decide to make a change, we will make a change for a perfectly good reason. We won't just arbitrarily. This is not going to become, somebody's memorial. We'll do something that historically makes sense and makes sense for the town of Darien. This is not change just for the sake of change. But since we are doing all this renovation, it makes sense to review what's there and what the name is. So we will do that. Any other comments? Yes?
Two things. Thank you for spearheading the conversation about our paramedics that reside at 701 Boston Post Road. I wanted to just comment for the record that that's been an exceedingly successful venture for the town. It's actually reduced our response times for ALS response because they're located in a different part of town than Post 53. So to the extent that we're able to work together so that can continue, very much appreciate that. And second, I'm mindful of the fact that we will need to convene the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee to vote to disperse funds to you for the project. So I'd like to respectfully ask that the Housing Authority make a formal request to the First Selectman via a letter that we begin that process.
That's fine. Todd, I'm going to look to you to be the one to tell us when it's appropriate to be. We'll want to give the Board of Selectmen more than enough lead
I'm
time.
just hearing you want to start that now. Is that correct?
Well, I think what I'd like to know is when do you need the money? Because we have a process that has to happen in advance of that. So
Right.
we'll work together to make sure that you get the money that's promised you when you actually need to use it.
So how long does your process take so that we have
You know,
a sense of?
It's scheduling meetings, which sometimes can take some time because this committee hasn't met for a while, so they're not in the routine of meeting. So to the extent that we could have at least a couple of weeks to organize a meeting and take the vote, that would be very, very helpful.
You'll let us know.
Yes, we'll draft it. We actually did reach out to Wayne earlier this week to sort of get the ball in motion in some of these things and help in the coordination of some of this. So we'll get the draft out, you guys can review it, and then get it over to the town.
Yes.
While we're on that subject, are they gonna put a historical plaque on the tent too, or are they gonna take the tent away when we move back in? Or are we still gonna have that eyesore there?
The tent for the ambulance?
Yeah.
We don't know. We have not resolved that issue yet, and when we resolve it, we'll let everybody know what we're planning on doing. But for right now, the agreement between the Housing Authority and the town is that the town has 4 parking places in that parking lot, one of which is being used by the ambulance. The requirement for that ambulance is that it be plugged in 24/7 when it's not on the road, because it keeps meds in it and it has equipment on it that has to be kept charged. Because it's being plugged in 24/7, it was deemed by Emergency Medical Services that it needed a covering, so the tent was put up there. We'll look at what the long-term solution to this issue is, as long as we're reviewing what we're doing in order to do the construction properly without impeding the response time of the ambulance. We'll look at the entire situation and figure out what the best thing is.
Somehow, it doesn't sound like it's gonna be remedied, but we shall see.
Well, I'd like to work with the Housing Authority on that too. We viewed the tent really as a temporary solution, so if there's something that we can work on together, that might be a benefit to the project and to us too. We can talk about that.
We'll take it under advisement, we'll figure out a way. When we're done, we want to be done. We don't want to have little bits and pieces that still have to be dealt with. We want everything to be dealt with. And so we'll see if we can't arrange to make that happen. Anything else in regards to anybody? Any questions, comments? Everybody understand where we're at? Yes.
I'm Ally from Darien Human Services.
Yes, of course.
And I just wanted to inquire about the existing waiting list. We have people call in our office frequently, those that believe they're on the waiting list. And then, of course, people wanting to, the new waiting list, or however you're going to proceed. Is there any idea how that's going to move
Okay,
forward?
there is a current waiting list for Old Town Hall houses that existed prior to the beginning of this process. And that waiting list will stay in place. We will not open, it is my understanding, as of right now, we will not open the waiting list for Old Town Hall houses, even though we know there are going to be more units available, until we have determined a better end date for the construction. What we don't want to do is get people's hopes up, put them on a waiting list, only to find out that we're still a year away from actually occupying the facility. Once we have determined where we think the occupation date is going to be, then we'll determine how to open that waiting list. What we did here at the Heights, when we made the determination that we were going to open the waiting list, we began to accept applications and to ensure that everybody was treated fairly. Now, it's a little different here at the Heights because there's several different categories of tenants here at the Heights based on what their income is. But what we did was we took everybody and put all the names, if you will, into a hat, and then selected them to determine the list that they would get onto on the waiting list. Obviously, people who are currently on the waiting list go to the top of the list. Existing tenants go in first, then the waiting list, and then from there, new people who come on the waiting list will be dealt with. But
There's a great demand. We get lots of calls, which we refer right back to you guys. So
Well, yeah,
multiple calls a week, so just wanted to get
when we decide to open that list, we'll publish it on the town website, we'll publish it on the Darien Housing Authority website. We have a website for Old Town Hall houses, we'll put it up there.
We will have that.
Up till then, calling the office here is the appropriate thing to do, and we'll just keep everybody advised. But everybody has to understand, that list is not ready to be opened yet because we don't know how long it's going to be before we can start actually putting people in residence.
Yeah, so if I could just add to that tiny bit, is maybe we'll get a draft of the website going for everyone to review here, and that way you can direct everyone to the website to get additional information as to the timing and requirements that, or the broad requirements that would be necessary in order to apply for an application.
Great. Just one suggestion, I don't know if, obviously your waiting list has been in existence for a while, and if you don't already do so, it might be a good time to confirm your wait list, call your wait list, and make sure that when you're ready to open it up, that you don't have to do that part of the process first.
We absolutely will do that, and just so you know, typically what we do with our waiting list is we do, when a person is on a waiting list for either the Heights or Old Town Hall houses, if housing becomes available and we call them, and for whatever reason they are not ready to accept that housing at that time, they might have a lease, there might be family circumstances, whatever, we don't automatically drop them from the list. But we don't give them unlimited times to say no, 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 and expect to keep that relative spot on the list. There is a process in place that says, we'll let you stay on the list in that position for, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but maybe 2 calls, and then you go to the bottom of the list, so that people who are waiting get moved up. And we'll continue to do that same type of thing. We're not looking to say, take it now or lose your opportunity forever. That's not how this operates, but because we do understand there are opportunities that people for whatever can't take it right then and there. So that's where we're at.
Great. One other comment, and Todd, I don't know if you'll remember this, Joe, maybe you'll remember this. When the town was, we were negotiating for the support that the town would give to the project, there was a promise made. I had requested that you consider setting aside 2 units for veterans, because I know that there was a larger initiative in the state of Connecticut to try and help end veterans' homelessness, and that idea was well supported by the Housing Authority at the time. So I just want to remember that conversation with you, if you're still inclined to allow for that. If you can allow for that, I'd like to re-express my interest in giving consideration to providing housing for 2 veterans.
I'm not going to sit here and make a commitment. We've talked about it, we've expressed an interest in doing that. Until I know exactly where all the funding is coming from and what, if any, restrictions are on that funding, I can't make a definite commitment that says, yeah, we can do this, because I don't know what other constraints we might be working under based on where all the money comes from.
I just wanted to communicate the town's desire for that.
Yep. Am I correct in that, Todd? on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we should have the flexibility to do it. And again, just we need to, when the dust settles.
I don't see a reason why we wouldn't not do it, but again, until I have all the
It's just been a long time since we had the conversation.
until I have all the things in front of me that tell me what I can or can't do, I don't want to make a commitment that we can do something. We'll work toward that goal, but we'll have to see where we are at the end. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? Moving right along. Old business. What do we have in the way of old business? The only thing that I'm aware of that is still hanging fire on old business would be discussed in a previous meeting, that we wanted to do a survey of residents here at the Heights. We are not ready to do that yet. We're looking at what's going to have to be done to make that happen. That's something that will get discussed at a later date. It hasn't been forgotten. It hasn't been.
The Imagineers has been working, as I recall, on coming up with the protocol, how to do it.
That's
and
correct.
what kinds of initial questions and so on to start building up a database of information.
We're moving in that direction. We're not prepared to announce a program to do it quite yet, but it's.
Is there any sense of timing?
I'm going to take a shot at this and say that we'll probably have some more detail by next month's meeting and be able to put a true timetable on it by next
Because
month.
we did, I know, tell them we wanted them to move as fast as is possible to put in place a vehicle to solicit input from the residents.
I understand. And we're moving in that direction. By next month, we should be in much better shape to have a timetable. New business. Anything under new business?
I got something.
Yes, I thought you might.
So, the town is working on a program to enlarge the intersection of West Avenue and Roden Avenue, which I think everyone knows is very congested. And they actually are having a public meeting on Thursday night at, I believe it's 7:30 in room 206 to go over the plans. But I sat down with Jeremy today and went over to this group a little bit of a update. They're widening around the corners of West and Roden Avenue, and one of those corners is ours. The impact on our facility would be that we would have a request for a long-term easement of a total of 68 square feet, which is almost minuscule, and a temporary easement during construction for about 4,500 square feet. What they would be doing is widening the road slightly on the corner and putting a sidewalk and doing some other improvements. And the reason they need the 4,500 square feet is to regrade our property so it's properly graded down to a sidewalk and it's not either a cliff or dangerous area. They're doing similar all the way around. I don't have the exact dimensions, but basically there's going to be probably 2 feet wider for a period of distance from the corners of Weston and Roten in the various different directions. So it's not going to be a very intrusive change to the property here. I think it'll be a big improvement for the town. But it does require that we will be asked for 2 easements in the course of this process, assuming it goes forward as planned. There are also going to be some relocations of items. There's I think a utility box which is going to have to get moved slightly because it's going to be too close to the road. There's a tree on the corner which will most likely have to come down because it's in the way of the work being done. I don't think it's going to impact the second tree, which is on West Avenue. I think it's just going to be the one on Roten Avenue. It'll just be the one on West Avenue. But that sort of devils in details as the program moves forward and all the engineers work their way through what they need to do. I don't think it's going to be a significant problem for our residents or our facility. I think it'll be actually an improvement because that intersection will not be as congested as it currently is. If this program goes forward, and I presume it's going to go forward, it appears that the construction would begin sometime in the spring of 2020 and go through the summer of 2020. So it'll be about 8 or 9 months time frame for doing all the work that has to be done. And again, there's a public meeting this week, and there's going to be a process that goes through for approvals, but it appears that, to me, it's a very logical thing to do, and having served in P&Z, that was one of those areas for years we thought really needed to have an enhancement to keep the traffic flowing and not become a bottleneck. And this looks, from what I saw, to be a very common sense, simple solution to it, assuming all parties and all the pieces come together on all 4 corners.
By the way, the meeting is at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. I just looked it up on the document. Comments, questions? I don't believe, from what I know of what the conversation I had with Jeremy today, the removal of the tree is going to be necessitated not because of how wide the road is going to be, but because of the grading, the regrading that's being done. What they are trying to avoid is putting a retaining wall in, rather than properly slope down to road level. And if you go by that corner right now, you will notice that on our corner, there's a very steep grade from the road up to the level. So they want to take that hump out of there and grade it to road level. And that's why the temporary easement. The one issue that might come up for our tenants is the fact that there will be some noise associated with this for those people who are in that corner building. And, whether we participate in the project or not, the noise is going to be there because the project is going to move forward. And it does seem to make an awful lot of sense to do it. And ultimately, in the long run, it will be better for everybody because it will relieve, number one, the traffic that backs up at that corner. And number two, one can only hope it will cut back on the number of accidents that occur at that particular intersection.
So is there any expectation to be parking of any equipment, trucks, whatever, in our parking lot?
At this point in time, there's no discussion of where and what kinds of equipment will be necessary. We did, my conversation with Jeremy, we did mention that the property right across the street over here, which has been a health center and at one point in time a water company, really has no parking. 2 of the gas stations do have some space for it. There may be requests later on. They also may not need that much heavy equipment. Maybe something they can phase in. I was surprised it's going to take as long as it is scheduled to do. But to me, it's a fairly simple project, and I think part of that is they're trying to do it in a way that they don't have to have as much equipment hanging around in the way. But that's not going to be determined until they get farther along too.
If there's a need, do we have the ability to accommodate that? Do we have the ability to accommodate that?
In all probability, we do not. We would discuss what alternatives there are. And the reason I say that is because if you look at those parking lots down in that area, our tenants use those parking spaces. So it's not like we have a half-empty parking lot where they can put equipment for a long period of time. However, there's plenty of grass area over there, and they're going to be tearing all that grass up anyway and then reseeding it. So having the equipment parked on the grass should not be a major problem. Again, for the tenants in that particular building, the issue is one of noise. And we might make some accommodations as to what time in the morning that type of work starts and what kind of work might be done on the weekends. Those are the kinds of things we'll discuss when we talk about how the easement is going to work.
I mean, they did ask for say 4,500 square feet. That's a lot of space they need for temporary. So, they may plan on parking some equipment there. I just don't think it's going to require as much big equipment. It's going to be more small stuff that they have to move around.
And certainly, in the end, taking that much space and grading the property down to the road bed makes a lot more sense than just lopping off the corner and putting in a retaining wall. In the long run, that's so much easier. It makes maintenance of the corner a whole lot easier. Maintenance of
No, it makes total sense. I just have some questions about how it affects
Maybe
our
we can
property and our
get the
residents.
trades from Topsfield for some plantings.
We'll look at it as we progress. We'll certainly, I intend to, it's my plan to be at Thursday's meeting to see what arises from that meeting. And we'll watch it very closely. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be on board with doing this unless somebody has an objection I'm not aware of. But we're not just saying, okay, do whatever you want. We're going to want to make sure it's managed in such a way that it doesn't have a major impact on our tenants.
Yeah, but I think the end product can be a big improvement for the site, so I think it's the way to go.
Sounds like it.
So we'll see how it all turns out. Anything else under new business? Anybody else got anything that I'm not aware of? No. Well, in that case.
Oh, wait, you have to approve the bills.
Oh,
There's still a few bills finally. So the paid bills for January 1st to 21st, as you see, there are only 3 line items on them. They're all final payments for Old Town Hall homes, and so, I don't see any problem with it at all, and hopefully we'll see even smaller requests coming through in future months until things get cranking. So I can make a motion for everyone to approve it.
the chair will entertain a motion to approve the paid bills report as submitted.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Done. Rather than make everybody move, we do have a couple of items to discuss in executive session. We have time before the other meeting, so why don't we just move into the office for a couple of minutes and take up the executive session material.
So you're making a motion that
I move that the chair can't make a motion.
But you're thinking a motion that we go into executive session,
Move into executive session.
and
We will come back to public session for the public hearing and to deal with any issues that arise out of the public hearing.
so moved.
Second.
So we're going to go in the office. You folks are welcome to stay if you so desire.
Mr. Television, if you need it.
Is going to stay because you're going to cover the public hearing. We are now. It is now.
It is 10 million.
Okay, I
It is
want to
now
confirm.
7:30, and I call to order the public hearing to discuss the selling of bonds by the Darien Housing Authority to finance the renovation of Old Town Hall houses. The project is to demolish the existing buildings at that site, which is 719 Post Road, and to construct a new 3-story building, which will expand the number of units from the current 23 units
32,
32
55.
to 50, yeah.
to 55. The bond application that we made allows us to sell up to $12 million worth of bonds. We in fact intend to sell $10 million in bonds. We set the $12 million number so that we have a little wiggle room in case we get farther along the project and find out there's a glitch somewhere that we need to accommodate. But it is our intention to sell $10 million worth of bonds. The purpose of this hearing is to take public input as to whether there are any comments as to whether we should or should not proceed with the sale of $10 million worth of bonds. I open it to the floor. Any comments, questions?
Just a quick question. Who, when are the bonds go on sale and who's the bond counsel?
Bond counsel is Marie Phelan from
Pullman Copland.
Pullman, right? When they will go on sale, Mr. McClutchy might have an answer to that.
Yeah, there's already a buyer lined up with Bank of America for them. And then therefore they'll be providing the construction financing.
That's it. Just curious.
Anything else? Anybody else have any comments? It's a pretty straightforward proposition. We will, just for information so you know where we're going here, we will, at our next monthly meeting, which will be in February, probably have an item on the agenda. One of the things that happens as a result of when we did the Heights, the Connecticut Housing Trust Fund sold the bonds. We realized that under the law, the housing authority is able to sell our own bonds, so we decided this time to do that. The major impact of that is that we get the fee, because there is a 1% fee. And we will discuss at our next meeting, either at the February or March meeting, and this totally dependent on how quickly paperwork comes through, et cetera, et cetera. We'll discuss the allocation of that fee, whether or not any or all of it will go directly to the housing authority to put into our reserve funds. Ultimately, all of the fee is available to the project if we need it. And at the end of the project, there is a development fee. So this gets rolled into the development fee. And the co-developers split the development fee amongst them, the housing authority being one of the co-developers. So it's get it now or get it later, but have it available if the project needs it.
And who are the other co-developers? Says the housing authority.
Imagineers and JHN. And there is a developer's agreement in place. Very similar to what we did here at the Heights. So now we're just waiting. We'll wait till 20 minutes to see if anybody else shows up to have any comments.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
We have to do, public hearing, as you know, is a legal requirement, so we're fulfilling the legal requirement.
Sorry, I'll text Charlie now and know that you behaved. So I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I'm excited to see the show. No, I appreciate it.
We're competing with some heavy firepower tonight. There's meetings all over town hall. That's why we held it here. We were going to hold the meeting originally at town hall, but all the rooms at town hall were taken.
It's okay. Sounds good.
If you have trouble calling us or anybody over there.
Okay, appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you
Guys
very
to
much.
send over where
That's
for that
right.
or otherwise,
Sounds good.
the more participation, the better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
You know the way it goes.
people, hey, these days people need bidders, so it's just, so you wanna, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody got some good jokes?
We got nothing.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry. I'm used to live air crowds.
Yeah, we're not apologizing.
Yeah, right.
Channel
Cameras on.
7
Sometimes
is
it's bad,
recording
but
the
just
channel.
that It's just,
Yes.
I'm gonna head home, so thank you very much, appreciate it, good to see everybody.
Thank you for
Take
coming.
care. Take care, good to see you.
As well.
See ya.
The public is gone.
I don't see anybody waiting at the door to come in. We called the meeting for 7:30. It is now well past 7:30. So unless somebody has another idea, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I thought you said until 20 out.
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay.
In light of having the meeting attendance as it is, we open the meeting, so I'll make a motion that we close the meeting.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.